Hi, and welcome back to Reddit Whispers. Our marriage was built on a single, unwavering principle, a mantra that my wife, Chloe, repeated so often it became the constitution of our life together. 50-50, Liam. Everything, 50-50. In the beginning, it sounded like the anthem of a perfect modern partnership. It was our rallying cry when we were young, broke, and sharing a tiny apartment with a leaky faucet and a mountain of dreams. I was the coder, the architect, the quiet engine in the garage, fueled by cheap coffee and a burning belief in the app I was building. She was the visionary, the marketer, the voice of our shared ambition. We were a team, and 50-50 felt right. It felt just. But a principle is only as strong as the integrity of the people who uphold it. As the years went on and my app, Synergy, started to gain traction, I began to notice a strange shift in our 50-50 equation. My 50% seemed to involve 80-hour work weeks, skipping holidays, and pouring every ounce of my being into debugging code and securing servers. Her 50%, however, began to look a lot like long brunches for networking, expensive yoga retreats for creative brainstorming, and a constant stream of high-end purchases for building our brand. I was the one putting in 100% of the effort, and she was the one enthusiastically planning how to spend 50% of the rewards. The first time the hypocrisy truly hit me, it was with the force of a physical blow. Synergy had just landed its first major investor. It was a life-changing moment, the culmination of 5 years of my relentless, back-breaking work. I came home, exhausted but ecstatic, ready to celebrate with the woman who was my partner in this incredible journey. I found her in our home office, not working on a marketing plan, but on a spreadsheet. On one side was the full amount of the investment. On the other, she had meticulously divided it into 2 columns, labeled Liam and Chloe. She was already slicing up the prize before the ink was even dry on the contract. "Isn't it amazing?" she'd said, her eyes shining with a light I now realized was not pride, but pure, unadulterated avarice. 50-50, Liam. We're finally going to get what we deserve. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, listening to the quiet, even rhythm of her breathing, and I felt a profound and terrifying sense of loneliness. I wasn't her partner. I was her mule, and she was just waiting for me to carry the gold out of the mountain so she could claim her half. The years that followed were a masterclass in this quiet, corrosive imbalance. Synergy grew into a multi-million-dollar company. We had a beautiful house, expensive cars, a life that was the envy of everyone we knew. And with every new success, Chloe's mantra became more frequent, more demanding. She invoked 50-50 when it came to our portfolio, our assets, our savings. But when a server crashed at 3 in the morning, it was my phone that rang. When a critical bug threatened a client relationship, it was my weekend that was sacrificed. When it came to effort, to the grit and the grind of actually running the business I had built, the equation was always 100-0. The final straw, the one that broke the back of my long, patient denial, was the discovery of her personal account. I stumbled upon it by accident, a bank statement left on her desk. It was an account I had no knowledge of, and it was filled with a significant amount of money. Money that had been systematically siphoned from our joint accounts, from the profits of the company, under the guise of business expenses for her non-existent marketing efforts. She wasn't just claiming 50% of the profits, she was actively, secretly paying herself a salary for a job she wasn't doing before she even got to the 50-50 split. She had been lying to me, stealing from me for years, all while looking me in the eye and preaching the gospel of our equal partnership. I sat there in the silence of our perfect, empty house, the bank statement in my hand, and I felt a profound, chilling sense of calm. The love, the trust, the shared dream, it had all been an illusion. I was in business with a con artist, and she was my wife. The grief was real, a deep, aching wound. But the engineer in my brain, the part of me that builds systems and solves problems, took over. She wanted 50-50? Fine. I would give her exactly what she asked for. I would give her the most meticulously, legally, and devastatingly fair 50-50 split she could ever imagine. She had no idea that our partnership, the one she had so thoroughly exploited, was about to be formalized in a way she would never, ever forget. The next phase of my life was an exercise in what I now call malicious compliance. I did not confront her. I did not rage. I did not give her the satisfaction of a dramatic emotional fight. Instead, I became the most enthusiastic, most accommodating proponent of her 50-50 philosophy she had ever seen. I sat her down one evening, my face a carefully constructed mask of earnest sincerity. "Chloe," I began, "you've been right all along. Our partnership is the most important thing, and we need to formalize our 50-50 agreement, for legal reasons, for tax reasons, to protect what we've built." Her eyes lit up. She saw dollar signs. She saw a legal document that would permanently enshrine her right to half of everything, without ever having to lift a finger again. She was putty in my hands. I told her I had hired a team of top-tier corporate lawyers to create a new, optimized business structure. I framed it as a brilliant strategic move to protect our assets and maximize our profits. I used all the business jargon I knew she loved but didn't understand. She nodded along, her expression one of profound admiration for my business acumen. The structure I had designed was a work of brutal, beautiful, and legally airtight symmetry. We dissolved our old, simple LLC. In its place, we created two new, identical, and completely separate corporate entities. Let's call them Synergy Alpha and Synergy Omega. I, Liam, would be the CEO of Alpha. She, Chloe, would be the CEO of Omega. We then began the process of dividing the assets, exactly down the middle, 50-50. She sat beside me, her eyes gleaming, as we transferred exactly half of our liquid assets into the corporate account for Synergy Omega. A clean, beautiful 8-figure sum appeared in an account that was solely hers to control. She had never looked happier. Then we divided the client list. I printed it out, took a ruler, and drew a line straight down the middle. "You take the top half, I'll take the bottom half," I said. 50-50. We divided the employees. The top 20 names on the payroll went to her. The bottom 20 went to me. We divided the intellectual property, a complex legal maneuver that gave each of our new companies a non-exclusive, perpetual license to the Synergy software. We even divided the liabilities, the outstanding invoices, the server maintenance contracts, the lease on our corporate headquarters. All of it split perfectly in half. She signed the mountain of paperwork with a flourish, her hand trembling with excitement. She was now the co-CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech company with a massive bank account and a roster of high-paying clients. She thought she had won the lottery. She thought she had just legally guaranteed her lifestyle forever. She had absolutely no idea that she had just signed her own declaration of incompetence. She had no idea that a title is not the same as a skill set, that a client list is not the same as a client relationship, and that a bank account is not the same as a business. She wanted 50% of everything, and I had just given it to her, including 50% of the crushing, relentless, soul-destroying responsibility. My 50% of the goodbye was complete. All that was left was for her to discover the true cost of her half of the equation. The first month of our new optimized corporate structure was a period of eerie, deceptive calm. Chloe was in heaven. She went on a shopping spree that would have funded a small nation. She hired a personal assistant, and she started referring to herself in the third person as the CEO. She was playing the part of a powerful tech executive, and she was loving it. I, on the other hand, was working with a quiet, focused intensity I hadn't felt in years. I was now the CEO of Synergy Alpha, and I was responsible for my half of the business, my clients, my employees, my servers. I spent my days on the phone, reassuring my half of the client list that the restructuring was a positive move, that their service would be uninterrupted. I held a meeting with my new, smaller team, and for the first time in years, I was completely transparent. I explained the situation, and I pledged my loyalty to them. I was no longer just a coder, I was a leader. The first crack in Chloe's perfect new world appeared on a Tuesday. It was payroll day. I ran my payroll and my 20 employees were paid on time, as always. But at Synergy Omega, a different story was unfolding. Chloe, it turned out, had no idea how to actually run a corporate payroll system. She missed the deadline. Her 20 employees were not paid. The panic started. Then came the client calls. A major client from her half of the list had a critical technical issue. In the past, that call would have come to me. Now it went to her. She had no idea how to even begin to diagnose the problem. She called me, her voice a mixture of confusion and imperial command. "Liam, there's a problem with the Johnson account," she said. "You need to fix it." "I'm sorry, Chloe," I replied, my voice a perfect mask of polite, professional detachment. "The Johnson account is an asset of Synergy Omega. I'm the CEO of Synergy Alpha. To work on your company's accounts would be a conflict of interest. I'm sure you, as a fellow CEO, can understand the legal complexities." The silence on the other end of the line was a beautiful, terrible thing. I could almost hear the gears in her mind grinding, trying to process this new reality. "But you're the only one who knows how to fix it," she stammered. "Then I suggest you hire someone who does," I said. "I believe your corporate account has ample funds for a high-end technical consultant. Good luck." I hung up the phone. That single conversation was the beginning of the end for her. Her half of the business began to implode with a speed that was almost poetic. Her clients, faced with a CEO who couldn't answer their questions and a technical infrastructure that was beginning to fail, started to defect. Her employees, unpaid and rudderless, began to quit in droves. She tried to throw money at the problems. She hired expensive consultants who charged her a fortune to tell her what I already knew. The system was complex and she had no idea how to run it. The massive sum of money in her bank account, the prize she had so coveted, began to hemorrhage, a torrent of cash flowing out to cover her own incompetence. She was the captain of a ship she didn't know how to steer, and she was sailing directly into a hurricane. The final, desperate confrontation came a few weeks later. She ambushed me in the kitchen of our house, the one place we still legally shared. Her face was a mess of tear-streaked makeup and pure, unadulterated rage. "You did this to me," she screamed, a wild, cornered animal. "You set me up. This 50-50 thing was a trap." "No, Chloe," I said, my voice quiet and steady, my hands not even trembling as I poured myself a glass of water. "It wasn't a trap. It was a mirror. I gave you exactly what you always demanded, 50% of everything. You just never bothered to understand what everything actually meant. You wanted the rewards, but you refused the responsibility. It turns out responsibility has a price, and your bill is now due." She just stared at me, her mind finally, truly and devastatingly understanding the full scope of her miscalculation. She had not been a partner. She had been a parasite. And I had simply and with surgical precision removed the host. The complete and total collapse of Synergy Omega took less than 6 months. It was a masterclass in self-destruction. The clients left, the employees sued for back pay, and the beautiful 8-figure sum in her corporate account evaporated into a cloud of legal fees and bad decisions. She was left with nothing but the husk of a company and a mountain of debt. My company, Synergy Alpha, in stark contrast, was thriving. Freed from the dead weight of her effort, I was able to innovate, to rebuild, to create a culture of genuine partnership with my small, dedicated team. We rebranded, changing our name to Foundation Code, a name that meant something to me. We rebankrupt, leaner, but we were built on a foundation of integrity and our profits soared. The final act of our marriage played out not in a dramatic courtroom battle, but in a quiet, sterile conference room with our lawyers. Chloe sat across the table from me, a broken, defeated woman. All the fire, all the arrogant confidence was gone. She was a ghost, haunting the ruins of her own greed. Her lawyer argued for alimony for a larger share of the marital assets, citing the vast disparity in our current financial situations. My lawyer simply slid a single bound document across the table. It was the corporate agreement we had both signed, the one that established our two separate 50-50 companies. My lawyer simply slid a single bound document across the table. It was the corporate agreement we had both signed, the one that established our two separate 50-50 companies. My client has already provided your client with exactly 50% of the marital assets as they existed on the date of this agreement, my lawyer stated calmly. What she chose to do with those assets is a matter of her own business acumen, not a matter for this divorce proceeding. Chloe's lawyer had no response. The trap I had laid months ago had been a legal masterpiece. She had signed her own financial death warrant. I walked out of that meeting a legally free man. But there was one last piece of business. I had one final thing to give her. The next day, I had a courier deliver a single sealed envelope to her. Inside was not a check, not a threat, not a letter. It was a single glossy brochure. A brochure for a local community college with the course catalog for a business management degree circled in red ink. It was a small, petty, and deeply satisfying final gesture. It was my 100% goodbye. A few weeks later, I bought her out. I purchased the physical assets of her bankrupt company, the office furniture, the server racks, for pennies on the dollar. I even bought back the other half of the lease on our headquarters. I needed the space. My own company was expanding. I stood in the empty office that had once been hers, the ghost of her ambition still hanging in the air. I had not just divorced my wife. I had given her a full-scale, real-world MBA in the consequences of her own actions. The tuition had been her entire net worth. And the final lesson was the simplest one of all. 50% of a dream is nothing if you're not willing to put in the work to build it. I had my company, I had my freedom, I had my integrity. I had 100% of my own life back. And that was a deal I was willing to take. Thanks for being part of Reddit Whispers. What's the most unforgettable betrayal you've ever lived through? Share it in the comments. You might help someone feel less alone.